Welcome to all Caribbean entrepreneurs. If you've been ready and waiting to take your business digital and get paid online while you sip something strong on the beach, this podcast is for you. We'll hear from the Caribbean's finest entrepreneurs on topics like e-commerce, business development, brand building, social media, their wins and failures. This is the only place in the region helping you navigate the digital age from the Caribbean's perspective. This is Digipreneur FM. And now, let's give it up for the Digiboss himself, Mr. Karan Rose.
Thank you for tuning in to another episode of the Digipreneur FM podcast. And I am your host, Mr. Karan Rose. Happy Sunday, folks. Happy Sunday. September 26th, we are going into October. I just watched the time and I realized how the time is flying. And it's just amazing to me. But you know what? It is flying, but a lot of fun. A lot of fun is happening as well. A lot of opportunities are opening up. There's just so much happening within the Caribbean region right now. And it makes me hopeful. It makes me very hopeful. Like, you're just seeing, especially because I'm going into my 7th year of living in Trinidad. So I actually moved to Trinidad, October 15th, 2013, and in and around there, October 15th, 2013. And when I had moved down, I was in Jamaica for a month. So I kind of really start in my mind, I'm like, okay, January 2014 is like when I fully unpacked and, started my life in Trinidad. But I actually touched down in Trinidad October 15, 2013. And so we're going on our 7th year. And it's just been the amount of change that I have seen throughout the region in that space of time, especially over the last 3 years. Again, just super encouraging. Makes you wake up and feel really hopeful that, we will be all right. Like we have components, we have things that are coming into the region that are giving us the tools and the abilities to do things in the region that we have never been able to do prior within the last 3-4 years. So again, just very hopeful and very encouraging. Now, you guys know what we do on a Sunday. Sunday is all about, the motivational side of the Digipreneur FM podcast, And I always like to talk to you guys about, either some personal stories, or I might bring on a guest to kind of provide some motivation. But I like to take it a different approach on the Sundays. So today's Sunday motivation episode is the top 6 sacrifices that I've had to make during my entrepreneurial journey. And I was laying in bed, and today is my weekend with my son. So he woke up before me. He woke up at 5:30, and I just felt like I was deep in sleep, and I just felt someone jump on me and just whisper in my ear, "Daddy." And I jumped up out of my sleep. I'm like, what the heck? I'm like, it's you again? And he's just there killing himself like, yes, it's me again. I'm here. And I'm like, wow. And anyways, he's doing his thing. He's playing some games. And I'm just in and out of sleep. And I'm just thinking, I'm like, you know what, man? There's been so much sacrifices during, my son is 6, and there's been so much sacrifices that have had to be made. And again, all of you, or a lot of you have kids, right? So you guys know the types of sacrifices that you need to make when you are building a business and have kids. It's not easy. If you are a if you are a mompreneur, if you are a single mother trying to build a business and raising kids, kudos to y'all. Y'all are superwomen. I thank God did not give me that task. Thank God did not make me a woman and put me on that path of being a single mother and trying to build a business. I would have folded. I would have folded a heck of a long time ago. So I couldn't have done that. But everybody has their journey. Everybody knows the types of sacrifices that you have to make depending on your specific situation when you are building a business and have kids. So I was just laying in bed, just reflecting on, some of the things that I've had to sacrifice over the past couple of years since I started my first business back in 2016. And I thought that this would be a good topic for this morning's episode. So it's kind of like, while I was reflecting and I was kind of thinking out loud, I decided, you know what? Let me jump on the podcast and let me kind of think out loud with the podcast community. Because some of y'all can relate. Some of y'all are early in the process and need to hear some of the things that, somebody else has to sacrifice to kind of put things into perspective for you. Again, my son is here, so if homeboy decides I've prepped him, I've given him his things, I've put some of his favorite games on so he can play. But if he decides to jump in here because he needs help eating humans, he's playing a shark game right now. If he needs help, you guys might have to hear us, eating humans with these sharks. So don't mind, all right? Just giving you guys a heads up, right? So, sacrifice number 1. Sacrificing having the physical Droid Island store. That was a big one for me. And it was a big one because when I had quit my full-time job at Digicel back in 2017, me and my ex at the time, we decided that, you know what? It was time to go full-time into Droid Island. We were building up an audience. And we both, when we sat down and we looked at where Droid Island had grown to, we were like, you know what? The next level is having that physical store. And you could do some really good things if the store is there, right? So we pooled our money together. And she was a big part of being able to finance that, especially because, again, when after we put the money in, you still gotta live, right? And when you're starting a business out, especially a brick and mortar, you're not breaking even out the gate. So I definitely got a lot of support from her during those times. But we had spent over $100K on the store. And that is, first and last, renovating the store. A lot of the furniture that we had to build we had to get a contractor to kind of build from scratch. Then you got to buy products. Then you have, your utilities, and then you got to do marketing. So we spent over $100K getting that store up and running. And I had the store officially about 7-8 months. And the reason I decided to close it down was because it got to a point where I was creating content. I wasn't in the store as much because I'm creating content, and I'm getting it's getting the attention of corporate, right? It was getting the attention of TSTT or B Mobile. It was getting Digicel's attention, Huawei's attention, Samsung's attention. So there was a lot of opportunities that the content was generating. So I had to go out and produce more, because when you can monetize your intellectual property, you get paid for your you're getting paid for the intellectual property, and there's a bigger profit margin, right? It didn't take, especially if you're producing content in a way that isn't, taking up too much resources to create, then there's a really good markup. And if you guys have a buy and sell business, you guys know that the profit margins on most buy and sell products, they're okay, and you have to sell on volume, right? So when I would get paid to do a video, outside of paying my videographer to shoot and edit, all the rest was essentially profit. And I was getting a lot more money doing the content. So I definitely did not want that to stop. And I was producing a lot more of it. So where the sacrifice came in was because at the time in 2018, me and my ex had separated. I had some decisions to make. I had the apartment that I was paying for, that I was paying rent on. I had the physical store I was paying rent on. It got to the point, like I said, where I'm spending less and less time in the physical store because I'm creating content and I'm starting to monetize. I'm starting to monetize on the content, and I had to make a decision to basically close the store. Right? It wasn't making sense. I'm not physically there. It's draining money it's draining money at this point if I'm not there. And then the sales, people would see the content, they would message me, and then I started to take clients by appointment, right? So the sacrifice of saying, most people would have been like, okay, if we're gonna close the store, let's at least try to make back the money. And the sacrifice I had to make then was just saying, yo, F it, man. Let's just chalk that money up as lost money, because I didn't make back the money that went into the store. I didn't make that back. I didn't make that back from the store. I made that back, through the content. Like after we closed the store down, like I made back the money through the content, but the store did not make back the money, right? So I had to be okay with losing the physical store. But, as the story progresses, and in hindsight, I think it was the right decision to do, because it would have held me back or would have just changed the trajectory of what I'm doing right now. All right. So that was the first big sacrifice, being okay with losing the 100K and keeping it moving. The second big sacrifice was coming off of the heels of, closing down the store, having to break up, and now, all the finances are on me. And I have a business that, again, the amount of money that it needs per month for it to run, plus having the apartment, it was too much, especially for a business that's now getting started. I could not demand that much money out of the business. It just was impossible to do at the particular time. And so the next big sacrifice I had to make was, after closing down the store, I realized that I needed to learn how to turn my blogging website at the time into an e-commerce store. And then, I had to learn how to, drive traffic back to the platform and build it and build it up so that I could sell online while I was creating content. And having the apartment at the time, the apartment was pretty costly. It was okay when it was two incomes inside the house, but as soon as me and my ex broke up and that rent was 100% on me, at the time there was just no way that I can do it. So the sacrifice that I had to make at that point in time was I had to say, you know what? Apartment, it has been real, but now I may need to go and live with my grandmother in order to be able to give my business a chance. If I am, throwing money at rent right now just to keep a roof over my head, it's going to take me a lot longer to build this business. Let's just say that. I can't say that I wouldn't have figured it out, but it would have taken me a lot longer, because at the end of the day, I would have had to have done a bunch of things to make money that may not have been within my niche in order to keep a roof over my head, even if I downgraded the apartment, right? But at that point in time, like, I knew that I could contact my grandmother and say, hey, you know what? Let me go back to my old room, right? So I know we have space in our family home. And when I had just moved, and even before I moved to Trinidad and I would just come and visit, there was always a room. There was one particular room that we have that was usually reserved for me whenever I come. And that was the place where I stayed when I had just moved, before I ended up moving out the very first time from my grandmother's, when I had officially moved to Trinidad. So Called up Granny. I told Granny, and the beautiful thing about your grandmother is, or at least my grandmother, I know everybody's situation is different, right? But the beautiful thing was that I know that my grandmother never really wanted me to leave in the first place, and I've never wanted to kind of stay there to be comfortable, right? Because it's a family home where the land is paid for, the house is paid for, so I can be comfortable there, right? But I don't want to be comfortable. I don't want to put myself in a position to just be comfortable and then get complacent. So when I called up Granny, I said, Granny, you know what? I want to move back. I got to figure out my business. And she was like, well, you should have never left in the first place. With all the love, right? So I moved back to my grandmother's in 2018. And when I moved there, and then it just so happened that about a year and a half later, so like midway through 2019, coming on to like the later half of 2019, we have a family friend who owns a big house literally across the street from my grandmother's house. And they have two apartments. So it's an upstairs, downstairs, and they have two apartments that they rent at the bottom, in the bottom half of the house, right? So because it's a family friend, I had a friend at the time that was looking for an apartment, and I told her about the place across the street, and it's a huge 2-bedroom apartment, really, really good rent. And then on top of that, because it's a family friend, I was able to get it at a good price. So when I reached out to the family friend, I told her that I may have somebody who'd be interested in the place. She gave me a good rate because it was me. Told my friend. My friend came and checked it out. Loved the place because again, it's a huge space, big 2 bedrooms, big living room, big kitchen area, big dining room area. So it's really, really spacious, more than enough for one person. So when my friend moved in, she literally she had her room and then just never really utilized the majority of the house, and then was never home. And so after a little while, we were talking one day, and I think I was talking about just the lack of space to have like a studio set up or like my desk and get some equipment. And she was like, well, why don't you, take the second room and we could split the rent? And I was like, okay, that could work. That could work. And on top of that, it's across the street from my grandmother. So, I ended up just being back and forth for a long time across the street, where all of my work equipment was across the street. And it kind of felt like I was going to work. So whenever I'd finish work at whatever time in the morning or whenever I finished work, I would just go back across the street, go and sleep. And then I eventually moved a bed in there, and I ended up just living back and forth between two houses for the later half of 2019. Then the pandemic hit, so I was doing a lot more work. So 2020, I was there. And then that kind of really set me up for moving out in 2021, where I was able to finally get back my own space. But again, sacrifice number 2 was, being able to give up my apartment back in 2018. If any of you guys have had to, go from living on your own and moving in with family, even if everything is good, like there's no problems moving back in, just the lack of your own private space is a huge sacrifice. That is a big mental sacrifice that you really have to be okay with. So that was a big sacrifice for me, giving up my apartment, moving back in with my grandmother, then getting a roommate, and just from 2018 to the early half of 2021, just being okay with being around other people and not having my own private space. But again, it's a sacrifice that I was willing to make in order to move forward. Sacrifice number 3. We go back to 2018. And I sold my car. When I was, trying to downsize the bills, figuring out what I was going to do with the store, what I was going to do about the apartment, I realized I'm like, man, I can't keep this car, because a car is money. A car is a depreciating asset, right? So a car is going, all the car was doing was just draining money. And then worse yet was that where my apartment was and where the store was walking distance. So it was a 2-minute walk away from the store to the apartment. So I never drove. I just walked everywhere. I walked there. The grocery was 2-minute walk. So a lot of the times I walked, and I would only drive like if I was going somewhere far. But other than that, everything was just in my vicinity. So I walked. And your cars is insurance, it's gas, it's maintenance, it's all those things, right? So when I sold it, I was able to at least get some money to be able to invest into my business and invest into my skill sets. And since 2018, since I sold that car, I have not gotten back a car. Like, I have been okay with taking public transportation. And now that, ride sharing services are really big in Trinidad, since I would say 2018, 2019, because 2018 is when Uber was in Trinidad before we really got all of the other local ride sharing services. 2018, I used Uber a good bit. 2019, same thing. I used it a good bit, but I was still taking public transportation. And then 2020, pandemic hits, and then I'm not really going anywhere much. So now all I ever use is ride sharing services. Even in 2021 to this point, all I ever use is ride sharing services. And I had thought about getting a car right before the pandemic hit, because at that point in time I was doing a lot of in-person meetings. I was doing a lot of physical workshops. So I was going all over the country to different places, and I was like, you know what? Okay. It might be good to go and get back a car, because then I could, I have the flexibility and freedom to do everything that I need to do and go all over the country without any problems. But then the pandemic hit, and then that forced me to convert everything I was doing digital. So now I really only ever leave the house to go and buy groceries or, minor shopping. Other than that, for the most part, I buy everything through an app, or I buy everything online and everything gets delivered. And even now, when I look at, the amount of money that I spend on ride sharing, it's a quarter of the cost of what I would pay for a monthly car note. So it just doesn't make any financial sense for me to get back a car. Worse, because here in Trinidad, we're still under state of emergency, so everything is still locked down. Things are going to be opening back up a little bit in a couple of weeks with, restaurants, bars, cinemas, and stuff like that. But again, I just don't spend. I don't spend enough money on rideshare. I don't spend enough money on rideshare monthly that would warrant me saying go and get a car. And because the pandemic is still, we're in full swing of it, I don't want to add a long-term bill like a vehicle to my expenses right now. I just don't feel comfortable making that decision, especially because I still feel like my business I'm still figuring it out. And while it's making money now, while it's profitable because we're monetizing our content and our digital courses and whatnot, I feel really good about it, I just don't want to go and add a car note, something that, again, it's a depreciating asset that's going to lock me into a term for X amount of years. I feel like right now during this pandemic, money needs to be flexible and as flexible as possible with not many long-term commitments to your name. That way, depending on how things swing, you know how to kind of restructure your life, and you can do that without fear of any sort of penalty. Which brings me to my fourth big sacrifice. So number 3 was selling my car. Number 4 is cutting down on my bills. I've had to, in building this business over the last couple of years, I had to really, really cut down on my bills as best as I can, because, again, if your sole income is in a business that is now growing, and that's the only way you're really making your money, you don't want it to have to provide in a major way and stress it before it's time. What happens is that people launch some businesses and they get desperate. Like they're trying to do as many things as possible, as much as possible. They take on bad clients. They do things that, are not aligned with the business. Every other week it's a special this, it's a special that. They're downgrading their costs just to get people in, just to make money. And a lot of the times it's typically because they got bills to pay. The pressure comes from having those bills to pay. And if they can't sustain their lifestyle, right, and they're building their business and the business is young, they just start to get desperate in their business, and they show up desperate. Their business screams desperation. Right? And that can turn some people off or give people the wrong idea as to what you are really about in this business space. So I did not want to do that. I really did not want to do that. And I had to focus on cutting down on my bills. I focused my spending primarily on my kids. I tell you, my biggest bill to this date is my 13-year-old daughter back in Canada. So homegirl's a teen, so she has her own style now. She likes her own things. Anytime me and her have a conversation where she's like, hey, she needs this for school, or hey, she needs new clothes because she's growing, right? And I'd just be like, okay, well, what's the budget? How much you need? And she's like, Dad, like, just send because I like good stuff. And I just have to laugh. It's just hilarious to me, right? But all jokes aside, like just the conversion rate alone to send money from TT back to Canada, she is definitely my biggest bill. My son is like, that man is like the easiest person. Homeboy just, man, if you give him eggs, boiled eggs and bread every single day, he's content. Like, you ask him, hey, what do you want to eat today? Bread, eggs, butter. And you're like, dog, damn, you don't want no lasagna? You don't want no pizza? You don't want no creme brulee? Bread. So, I mean, he's easy, right? But my two biggest bills are definitely my kids, which is cool. I have no problem with that. And I would say investing in courses, investing in tools, in books, things that are going to help me, get to the next level. That'll be my next biggest bill. Well, I have rent now, but the funny thing is like rent is not expensive. Rent is not expensive. I got a nice place, really nice place, good view, good space where I could have all of my equipment and everything and have my own dedicated office space to do all of my stuff. But rent to me is just kind of like, yo, this is you're paying this is your studio, this is your safe haven, this is your bat cave. This is where you can, be away from everybody in the world and kind of just focus and do your thing, right? So I have that now. But my biggest bills are my kids and the tools, the courses, and the things of that nature. Funny enough, a big sacrifice has been buying clothes. I have not spent money on clothes since 2018. I really have not been spending money on clothes since 2018. I think I had gone to a couple of events, and when I say a couple, I mean like 3 or 4 events in 2019 where I picked up a shirt or I picked up a pants. But to say, like you're buying kits, you're buying outfits, you're upgrading your wardrobe. I have not done that since 2018. So what I have done, especially since I do a lot more video now, and I have to show up at least decent, and I kind of want to show up branded, is I've simplified my wardrobe. So now for me, it's sweats, it's hoodies, man, it's flip flops. And socks, like 95% of the time, that is typically me. Whether I'm in the house or whether I'm on the road, it's sweats and sweaters. And I've branded a few sweaters so that again, when I show up online, like I still look good, and I'm branded, right? But I really have not been spending money on clothes, and that has been something that I've sacrificed because again, like you're building a new business, you need to be able to direct the funds where the business really needs it, especially when you're growing, especially when it's growing. And clothes has definitely been something where I was like, man, yo, listen, we can't spend money there, at least not yet. Like there'll be a time for that, but right now it ain't that time. So I branded a few things, and I've kept the wardrobe simple. And again, the big sacrifice, the fourth biggest sacrifice is just simplifying my bills, cutting down on the expenses, and sacrificing on the wardrobe and keeping your wardrobe simple. Think about like what I know Steve Jobs and Mark Zuckerberg have talked about this extensively. Keeping a very simple wardrobe. So Steve Jobs would come up on stage with a blue jeans and turtleneck, and he's like, that is his uniform. Zuckerberg is blue jeans and a t-shirt. That is his uniform. So I kind of have that in mind, and I just keep it simple, and that way, you're not really focused on spending money on clothes. Sacrifice number 5. In the spirit of simplifying things, I have simplified my life. I live a very, very simple hermit life, and I needed to do this for a few reasons. So I've been in hermit mode since 2018 to focus on me, getting myself in a good space mentally, learning new skills. I took the time to look at the opportunities in the country and in the region, and I needed to put time in to nurture those opportunities. So I don't really hang out. You will almost never see on my Instagram stories, me hanging out with a group of people, or I'm in a a gathering. You probably are not going to see that anytime soon. You barely even see me at family gatherings. Now, this is something that I get a lot of flack for. So you barely even see me at family gatherings, just because, again, like right now, I'm in full on hermit mode. And some of you may hear this and agree and say it makes sense. Others may say, well, no, mental health, and I need to be around people, and yada yada yada. Listen, do what you need to do for you. For me, I know that I needed to isolate myself for some time. I'm sure you would have heard the saying, disappear for 6 months, read new books, drink water, work out, and reappear as a whole brand new person. Well, I've been doing that since 2018. I have been in hermit mode since then, and I've just been there's just been so much deconditioning and unlearning that I've had to do. And then again, just learning new skills, figure out who I am, what I want to do, what I want to be, still try to make money to support my kids and chip in and pay my bills or whatever. So there was a lot that needed to happen, and there's still a lot happening with me just in my own head that I'm still trying to figure out. And when you have a bunch of people around you, when you have a lot of relationships, friendships, whatever that require your time, require your energy, those things can complicate your life because those people will need your energy and time at some point. And so when you have a group of people that, it doesn't matter if it's friends or family, when you just have a group of people that need you and need your time, need to talk to you, need to see you, need to hang out, it can complicate your life, especially when you are in the building phase of your business. So you just don't really see me hanging out because I rather just focus on just getting to know myself and just spending time, reading, watching videos, and just getting myself right. I don't really do too many family gatherings. Love my family to death, but I don't really do them much right now because I just want to be alone right now. Like right now, I just need to be alone. So when people typically see me, it's because I'm bumping into them in the grocery or in the marketplace, or if I have to jump in the mall, I might bump into people. I mean, that's just what it is for right now. It could change, but for right now, I just need to be in hermit mode to just gather myself and do what I'm doing. And we're in 2021, and I've been doing this since about 2018, and I can see that it has worked. I can see that my focus has changed. Where I am mentally is completely different than a couple of years ago. So I see the growth. I feel the growth. I feel good and where I'm at in my life right now. And I tell everybody, like, it's not personal. Like, it really is just me. And the fact that people can see, okay, we're not seeing him in person, or, he's never really on the phone or talking to people or whatever. But the fact that you're seeing the outcome of his decisions and his actions, we know that he's good and he's in a good place. And I think people have kind of allowed me to do that and not really bother me too much. And yeah, it's all love whenever I see them and whenever I do talk to them. But again, that could change in the future. But simplifying your life, is a big sacrifice. It's not something that everybody wants to do, especially during this pandemic. Because we're already isolated. We are already isolated. So to further isolate yourself, where you're not even really, hanging around people in small groups or taking too many phone calls. That's just another level. And which kind of goes into number 6 for me. It is simplifying relationships with people. There's not many people that I speak to on the phone. I jokingly say that I am the most inaccessible person you will ever meet. I'm accessible because you always see my content, whether it's a blog, a podcast, videos, social media. You always see me digitally. However, it's almost impossible to get me on the phone. It's hard to get me on the phone, and worse, people think that I live in a digital world. Like I'm a figment of people's imagination, because you just don't see me in a room with people. Like at least not now. It worse since the pandemic. You just don't really see me out in the public space unless you've bumped into me, on my way to the grocery or something like that. But I've had to simplify relationships to people and set expectations that, I'm not going to be, on the phone. I'm not going to be texting the world. I'm not going to be hanging out. Like, I'm not going to be doing any of these things because, again, I just needed to simplify my life, simplify the energy that I give out and that I receive during this time period, because a lot is happening, and building this business and trying to figure out my own purpose and figuring out what I like and turning it into something that can sustain me and my kids, and it's something that I can wake up to every single day and do, whether I make money in it or not. It's taken a lot. So, again, just in this present state of being a hermit, the life needed to be simplified so I don't do too many things. And my relationships with people have definitely needed to be simplified because, when people have expectations of you, that's where all the problems come in, right? So I just, I don't have no expectations of nobody. Nobody owes me anything. Nobody has to give me anything or do anything for me. I will, learn how to get it done for myself. I will learn how to outsource it if possible. I just keep relationships really, really, really simple. And again, it's just what is needed for me and what is required of me during this particular point in time in my life. So those things are not set in stone, but in order to really gain some order and rebuild my life, because remember, I've gone through, I hate to rehash, and I'm not going to rehash it here, but I've gone through, I've seen my depths of hell. Everybody's depths, everybody's rock bottom, is going to look different. I've hit my rock bottom multiple times over the years, right? And the last time where I felt like I was at rock bottom, like Dwayne The Rock Johnson, put me in his finishing move, the rock bottom, and slam me down on the canvas. The last time I felt like that was 2016. And so since 2016, I've been on just this journey of unlearning, learning new things, just, kind of learning how to build my life and design it in a way that makes me feel good. And it's just taken a lot. And I don't expect people to understand it. There are many people who have fallen out of my life because they don't understand it. Or they want to be in it, but I can't give them what they want, or what I do give is not enough. And I'm okay with that, because at the end of the day, the people who really understand what I'm doing and how I need to operate, and we have learned how to coexist and within our relationship right now, with where I'm at and where they're at, and we can, we can give each other what we need during just time. They're here. They're here. So not everybody's going to understand it, but those that will understand it will figure out ways to work with you and be in your life. But going into hermit mode has allowed me to rebuild everything. Now, in 2021, and going into October 2021, I feel safe. I feel secure. I know that all the sacrifices I've made over the past couple of years were needed. I look back on everything that I've done right and wrong, and I could feel good about it, because even in the failures, there were good lessons that I've learned that are helping me to this point. And so again, when you hear people talk about their entrepreneurial journey, you don't really hear too much of the bad parts of it, right? But yeah, again, I wanted to share with you the sacrifices that I've had to make in my own journey. And so just to recap, the top 6 sacrifices I've made in my entrepreneurial journey is, number 1, investing $100K into the Droid Island store. And then after 7-8 months, saying, hey, you know what? Forget it. I'm going to focus on the content, because I needed to do that at that point in time. So I had to be okay with losing that money. Second, giving up the apartment that I had to save money and moving back in with my grandmother. Third, selling my car back in 2018, never getting one back, and deciding that I would use rideshare services to minimize my expenses. 4, cutting down on my bills, focus my spending on reinvesting into myself, my business, and my kids. 5, simplified my life. I'm in a hermit mode right now. I don't do too many things. I've just kept it really, really simple so that I can focus on, what I need in order to grow as a person and within my business. And number 6, simplifying my relationships with people. That way there's not too many expectations of me from people. I don't have too many energies around me. I'm not in too many social spaces. And all of that has just allowed me to grow as a person and grow within my business. And, the work is kind of showing, and I'm really happy about that. So that's it for me for this Sunday motivation episode. I hope that there was a gem in here that you guys can take and implement into your own lives. I would also love to hear from you. Let me know, what are some of the sacrifices that you have had to make in your own entrepreneurial journey. There's definitely things that I could learn from the Digipreneur community as well. So make sure that you guys are following me on social media. I'm Karen Rose everywhere. You can subscribe to the digipreneur.fm website so you never miss an episode. Also, you can subscribe to KarenRose.com, where we talk about, building your online business, your platforms, and learning how to monetize them. Growing your, becoming discoverable on Google, all that good jazz. If you enjoy the Digipreneur FM podcast, make sure you guys rate the podcast. Don't forget to drop a review, because the reviews help the podcast grow. Thank you very much. I'll see you during the week. Take care.
You've been listening to the Digiboss, Karan Rose. We hope your notepad was filled after this episode. Make sure to like, rate, and review the show. The learning doesn't stop, folks. And to make sure you don't miss any gems from the Digiboss, go over and follow him on all social media platforms at Karan Rose. Folks, don't just sit there with a notepad. We need you to implement at least one thing into your business before the next episode. That's the only way your business levels up. Thanks for listening to Digipreneur FM. Now go be great.